Joining us this morning via virtual means is Dr. Oladoyin Odubanjo, the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Academy of Science, Chairman of the African Chapter of the International Network for Government Science Advice, and former Chairman of the Lagos branch of the Association of Public Health Physicians of Nigeria. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Thanks so much for joining us.
I think that's Steve. So good morning. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. That's Steve. Yes, thank you. And Abby is here too.
Great. Good morning, Abby.
All right. Good to have you. I mean, Doctor, there are two key issues here. One, we're dealing with a new variant, Omicron, which looks to many people that it is more of a political variant than a science-backed, if you know what I mean, variant, given the emotional reactions that have trailed what the Western world are saying, banning Nigeria, banning many African countries from coming to Europe and from coming to many parts of North America. And then the flip side of that is the discovery that there are millions of expired vaccines that we have had to deal with. Yes, we have had what the Minister of State for Health, Dr. Mamora, had to say, almost basically saying that it's a non-issue, these are gifts from friends, etc. But we do not know if anybody has had the misfortune of having these expired vaccines. What are your thoughts, given that these are challenging times and there are two bad news coming out almost at the same time? How do you feel about all this?
Well, it's unfortunate that we are having it, especially at this time that we are meant to be the happiest we can be throughout the year. This is the season that we all look forward to, to really throw away our shoes, our hearts, and just play and be happy. And then we have this spanner in the works that seems to have messed up everything. But then that said, the truth is that the variant itself is not a member of any political party. Is the reaction that might have been political, but I would also say it's not exactly political. What we have had from the beginning of last year is actually two pandemics, not one. We have at least two pandemics ongoing. One is the actual viral pandemic we have. The second one is a pandemic of fear. And a lot of decisions, haven't come down, 1.5, 2 years down the road. A lot of damage has been done. Lives also have been lost. Livelihoods have been lost. Families have been destroyed. Educational plans scattered. Career plans scattered. All kinds of damages that we can't even quantify. And economies are in shambles, not just Nigeria, but globally. So you can now understand where the fear again plays in. So everybody is beginning to relax and feel like, okay, maybe we're getting used to this. We have a hang of this. And then all of a sudden, we have the announcement of the Omicron variant, which in the laboratory looked very sinister, very, very sinister. Over 30 mutations in a very dangerous area. And so the thoughts were, hey, this is going to cause a lot of havoc. But again, there are theories around viral mutations, or let's call it microorganism mutations, which is one of my favorites, is that you think of it this way. They say sometimes the organism itself wants to stay around as long as possible. So the organism wants to survive. It wants to linger. It wants to be around. Just like every living thing wants to live. So in doing that, the organism mutates. So you're attacking the organism, and that organism begins to change to evade your attacks. It builds up defensive mechanisms and whatnot. But in doing that also, the organism is also mutating to ensure that it can actually infect more people. Okay? But some scientists believe that in mutating to infect more people, the organism also doesn't want to commit suicide by killing the people that it's infecting. So it looks like it loses some virulence, which is what we call the real power to kill. Okay? It looks like it is compromising the power to kill in order to gain the power to propagate itself more. But in the laboratory, the Omicron variant looked like this is really serious, this is really dangerous. But in reality, it's looking like it has the infectious capacity, so it can move more readily from person to person, but it's not looking as dangerous in terms of the virulence, that is the ability to kill, as it looked like in its photograph in the laboratory. So when people first heard about what it looked like, theoretically, it looked like this is serious. We don't want to go through this again. You remember what we went through earlier in the year with the Delta and all that, people dying. And so people were like, no, we need to shut down everything. And that was the reaction. And that was the reaction based on the fear pandemic. But the political side of it, which wasn't entirely scientific, is that when the announcement was made to ban the country where the announcement was made, or the countries around there, was quite political, because the fact that I detect it as a scientist in Nigeria doesn't mean it started in Nigeria. It only means I was the first to discover that this thing has changed. Okay, and so you don't ban Nigeria because I announced it first. You have to ask the next question, which is, where did that mutation come from? Is it still localized? Is it still something we can contain? So if by the time, by 1 week down the road, we discovered even Nigeria as far back as October with the Omicron variant, meaning this variant has been running around the whole world for a while before South Africans announced to us that they've detected this. It takes barely 48 hours for an organism to move from any part of the world to another. So if you've had it since October, it's probably in every country in the world. That's my bet. Okay, and that's why you will say politically, it's a waste of time trying to ban everybody. The question to ask is, would vaccines be okay? So can we say only vaccinated people will be allowed to travel? If you're not vaccinated, can we say you must do PCR so many times or whatever in order to assure us that you're not carrying it? But we cannot particularly say this is where it's coming from and we're going to ban them. That is political.
Right, Dr. Odubanja, very right in saying that this is all very ill-timed. But then again, many would argue that it's never a good or welcome time for a new variant, right? But let's talk about the expiration of the vaccines that we have currently. Of course, it's to our understanding that many of these vaccines are received at a very late point where we don't even have enough time for distribution. And that's what, of course, the government is saying. So now, are there any measures that we could have taken or things we could have done differently? Or is this a case of beggars can't be choosers?
Absolutely. A beggar has no choice. So if you take what I give you, if you're begging. So the only option we have that guarantees, what we get is for us to buy what we get. If we buy it, then the producers cannot sell us what is about to expire. That will not be acceptable. But if I'm your friend and I'm giving it to you, you take it in the sense of we hope to use it because you have an emergency on, and you hope that, we have 1 million doses, we can consume that. We're 200 million plus people. So we'll hope that, yes, we can use that up very quickly. And if you don't, then you have to dump it.
Okay, Doctor, let me also expand that a bit and split the question into two. The first is near-expired vaccines were sent to us as gifts. Are there ways that Nigeria could register its displeasure with the friendly countries that have done this? We do not know that whether they did it on purpose, etc. But first part of the question actually is, which is where I'm going. Until this happened, we have not had any situation in Nigeria where the authorities are, looking further than the ordinary. It doesn't look to me like we think that there could be issues with some of the vaccines that we are either buying or we are receiving as gifts. And I'll give you two examples. In Japan, 1.7 million doses of the Moderna vaccines were discovered to be contaminated, and they were rejected outrightly. In the US, where they are manufacturing vaccines, a plant was shut down in Philadelphia because they discovered that there were issues with the vaccines that were being produced. But once they get here, nobody seems to bother. They are offloaded, they are dispatched to all the places, and then you ask people just to come and take it. We've never had any case of people looking deeper, than the ordinary. That's the one part of my question. Quickly, the second part is now the federal government in line with what is happening in Europe and in America. They're now saying, okay, we've approved booster shots, but only Pfizer. Pfizer that was not available for first and second jabs, especially for those who wanted only Pfizer, given the fact that the only one up till today that has earned the final approval is Pfizer. Now, is federal government not willy-nilly falling into the same trap that WHO is campaigning against, on the part of the West? You are approving booster jabs, whereas there are so many parts of the world that they have not even had a first jab. In Nigeria, less than 7% have had their 2 doses. Now you are giving Pfizer to those who have had two jabs because of the pandemic of fear that you refer to, Doctor. I mean, does this make sense at all when 93% of the population has not even had one? Out of the ones they are probably meant to have, 2.5 million are discovered to have expired. What's going on?
Now that's a lot. I hope I remember it all.
I apologize, Doctor. I felt very touched about it.
Yeah, I can tell that. But to start with, I think it's a bit unfair to say the government, doesn't do anything to protect us against bad, products. I think that's not quite the situation. I know a number of people, and I'm sure you do too, who work for government, who are civil servants in the health sector, who are very conscientious, who are very strict about their job, who are patriotic, and they do their job very well. And let me say also that nobody in this instance, okay, I'm not quite a defender of government, but I just say the truth. In this instance, nobody made the government dump the vaccines. The government dumped the vaccines because they were protecting Nigerians. So we should give credit for that. It's not as if the vaccines were caught and people caught that, oh, you have expired vaccines and you're giving to us, and then they quickly mopped it up and went to throw it away. No. They did it, and then we knew they did it. And then they had to explain why they did what they did. So that is protection.
But doctor, to cut you, sir, the government did not volunteer that information until the media exposed what has happened, if you follow.
The media exposed the fact that they dumped the vaccines, not that the media exposed the fact that the vaccines were being used, and then they quickly packed it away and went to dump it. Okay. So in terms of wanting to protect the populace, they did badly, perhaps with communication, maybe, but they were protecting the populace. That's why they actually did dump the vaccines in the first place, and they did not try to push it out and use it still. Okay. Not only so, if you remember just a while back when we got Moderna vaccines from the US, the vaccines came in and it took a while before they were deployed. And that's because the government also insisted on certain certifications that did not come with the vaccines. So they insisted that except we get this and this and this, we can't use it. We must see certain things to verify what we are getting. So again, people are trying their best. I'm not saying that best is 100% fantastic, but I'm saying that they are doing what they can to a good extent, to a large extent. So that said, I'm now trying to remember what was your second one.
The booster jab, the Pfizer booster jabs for those who have had their double jabs in Nigeria.
Yeah, so the booster jab, I think you rightly pointed out that partly this is driven by the pandemic of fear. Because again, a lot of studies are still on. Even studies about is AstraZeneca better than the Pfizer, even though Pfizer got its final approval, as you quoted. But then there are also people, even within the US system, who objected and felt that the approval for Pfizer was maybe political. So there are questions all over the world. And then the issue of booster was still being debated when Omicron came up. And when Omicron came up, everybody out of fear began to shout, hey, maybe the boosters are the way to go. And of course, Pfizer quickly volunteered the fact that with a booster, their vaccine is very effective against Omicron. But the question is, that is coming from the person who is trying to sell me the product. Okay? So how many independent studies have we had that tell us that that is the case? All right. So we have to, and all of this speaks to the fact that as a country, in terms of national interest, we must also be spending money on research. Okay, we can't depend on what you are told, because what you are told, we seem to assume that in other climes, things are not political. We seem to assume that in other climes, people are not corrupt. And all of that is not true. So if you want to really protect your national interest, you must put your money where your mouth is. And you must fund your local research so there is no external influence. You must fund your local production of things, also as much as possible, so that you have some degree of your own security, health security protected. So I think that's where we stand. Is there one more I left out?
No, you've covered it, Dr. Osagie. Thank you so much for that. But let's talk about communicating with the public, as you addressed earlier. How do we begin to allay the fears and concerns of Nigerians about, possibly having been jabbed by an expired vaccine?
Yes, from the get-go, I've maintained the stance that I think our biggest problem in Nigeria and globally, where this pandemic is concerned, has been communication. We've gotten the communication wrong too many times. And one of the first areas would be who the messenger is. Where do you get the message from? Even from some of our discussion this morning, which I believe you are speaking for many Nigerians, part of that problem is that we don't trust the messenger, which oftentimes is the government. Okay, we don't trust the government. That's not strange, even globally. Studies have found that where this is concerned, this pandemic and other health issues, people trust more their local physician, nurse, scientist. Have we used enough of them to speak to the public? So when we have all these daily briefings, how many scientists talk to Nigerians there? Have we driven this way down to the community, whereby my doctor down in my street, who treats everybody in the street, is the one doing the communication, is the one engaged by the government to communicate with the people in that neighborhood. So that's the kind of thing we need to be working at, not thinking that we can speak as the government. No matter how true what we are saying is, there will always be people who will doubt it simply because it's coming from the government. So we need to change the messenger. We need to use other messengers who have greater credibility with the people to drive, to pass across these messages. Then we also need to start listening to people more. Don't just tell them this is it. Oh, you don't take a vaccine, we buy you from party, we buy you from this, we buy you from that, we buy you from drinking, we buy you from eating. It's not good enough, because it's not going to be sustainable. Not only so, human beings by nature are going to try to evade it. They are going to come up with fake this, fake that, and all kinds of things. Okay. You need to ask them, what exactly are your fears? We need to have, fora where people can ask the people they trust the questions that matter to them. And don't think that they are general questions. Give everybody the opportunity as much as possible within the environment to ask those questions. And when they ask the questions and people with credibility answer their questions, they are more likely to do what you want them to do without it being forced upon them. What that also would mean is that it's going to be sustainable. It means that they will do it when you are not watching. Wear your face mask, they're going to wear it when you are not there. Wash your hands, they will when you are not there. Because now they believe in what they're doing and why they are supposed to be doing it.
Doctor, I really like that clarification, because it speaks to the heart of, how to deal with situations like this, because we're dealing with human beings that are not in a laboratory that you are just experimenting with. But I know that we have just few, minutes to go. If you don't mind, Doctor, how do you think that Africa in general has escaped much of the impact of the pandemic since it started in February, March last year, given that, on the whole, less than 10% of the continent has been vaccinated? And given the fact that the sort of lives that we live here, in the generality, of the people, does not lend itself, strictly speaking, to social distancing, etc. Yet, we have managed to escape the sort of a prophecy, shall I say, or the expectation that people will be dropping dead with less vaccination. How does science explain it, and how do you think we should carry on with or without having the adequacy of the sort of vaccines that are required?
Well, I would say that first, the truth is that nobody has the answer to that as a concrete scientific fact. There are different studies that have been done and are ongoing to try to answer that question definitively. But I have two theories I've always proposed. One is the fact of the weather. You have a much harsher, warmer weather here, which does not favor flu-like viruses as much, which also means that what you get as community or indirect transmission will not be as much as you get in the West in the cold periods, in the winter, which they were already preparing for it. They already kept saying, when winter comes, we're going to get a spike because of the weather. And what that means is that when the organism is outside the human being, it's on a doorknob, it's on this, it's on that, it's going to survive for longer. And that means it's going to move from people to people. Without me contacting somebody with the virus, I can contact surfaces with the virus for longer. The virus will be there for much longer, and I can pick it up there. So you should get more transmission that way over there. That's one. And then when you go to the individuals, I think there's a bit of a hypothesis on the hygiene theory, which is that we still have so many microorganisms and things we're exposed to here that probably have spiked our immunity a little bit, and makes us rather resistant to many things that others may not be anymore. They have a much cleaner environment and lifestyle than we do. But again, like I said, these are theories, theories in the sense of they are not yet concrete scientific facts, but we have, we probably have that kind of scenario where you already have the immunity standing strong because it's always challenged all the time, here. And then you bring one COVID, the thing slaps COVID easily and says, what are you doing here? So, and then the lifestyle, so you have people walking in the sun. You wonder why the higher class people seem to have suffered more from COVID here, than the lower class people, who are the ones also in the crowded places in the slums and whatnot. But I tell people, you look at somebody who does a low manual job, he is going to work for 30 minutes, 1 hour to walk in the morning. You are going to drive, or be driven, but he's going to walk. He can't even afford the transportation.
All right. Thank you so very much, Dr. Odubanjo, for joining us today. If you're just joining us, we have been talking to Dr. Oladoyin Odubanjo, who is the Executive Secretary of the Nigerian Academy of Science. Thank you very much for all of that, all the points you shared with us this morning.